So all month long, we've been looking at this idea of love. We talked about love being the divine givingness of God, that God wanted to pour itself forth into creation so much through such a strong desire to actually experience love, that it began to make everything that we see in the universe, each one of us individually, everything that has ever existed, everything that is yet to be, is all a product of the love of the divine Creator that has brought itself forth to experience life through each one of its creations, through each one of us. You know, before I came here, when people would say things like, well, all you need is love, or, love is the answer to that, I kind of thought they were wishy-washy platitudes, to be quite honest. It didn't really resonate with me, and I thought, oh, that's just being dismissive to what I'm experiencing right now. But as I've really studied and learned and practiced this philosophy that we have here, I've come to realize how powerful love is. If we go back to our affirmations here, see if I can get it back. I am the love of God. Very simple phrase. Very easy to understand intellectually, but do you feel it inside of you when you say those words? Do you feel that presence beating in your heart center? Do you know that it brought you into existence simply to experience love through you? I am the love of God. That part's not too hard, usually. I see through the eyes of love. Sometimes this can be a bit of a challenge. When we're experiencing people in our lives and different situations in our lives, it's often hard to get to that place where we can see love or see through the eyes of love. And so that's what my talk is about today, is actually learning how to get to that place where we can see through the eyes of love. Ernest Holmes says this. I found this new book. Well, it's not a new book, of course, it's written by Ernest Holmes, but I found it, it's new to me, called Life is What You Make It. He wrote it in conjunction with Frederick Bales. It says, it is this universal power of law, animated by love, which dissolves our human problems. Our part is to fearlessly face any apparently difficult situation and, instead of seeing the difficulty, transmute all fear into faith of the one who really believes. Instead of seeing the difficulty, instead of having our eyes focused on what the problem is, imagine how it would be transmuted if we were looking at it from a place of faith in that love of the Creator, in faith that each person is coming to every situation with some aspect of love. Now, I know I have experienced situations where I thought there's not a lot of love in this place at all. I'm sure most of us have had encounters like that, where there's no way in the world we could think this person is coming from love. But if we begin to really look at it and develop that faith in that love, that understanding that this is the operating force of the universe, this is what the Creator has intended for each one of us to be and to experience in our lives, then we begin to have a different situation. Ernest tells a story in this book, Life is What You Make It, called The Attracting Power of Love. And so in this story, there's this young woman who comes to him for counseling. And she works in an office with a manager who is extremely difficult. This man was so difficult that the woman had gotten to a point where she could not stand the sound of his voice. When she heard him walking, his footsteps irritated her. She couldn't stand the kind of ties that he wore. She didn't like the way that he moved his eyes. There was not one single thing about this man that she liked. And he was mean to everyone, according to her. But Ernest starts working with her about beginning to shift that story within herself. Because remember, we can't do anything to change somebody out there. All we can do is change what's happening inside of us. All we can do is change our experience of it. And so if we can actually begin to shift that around, then we can begin to have a different experience with everyone in our lives. So what happened was she began to look for those little things that didn't really tick her off about this guy. She had to start with that. She couldn't get to the point of love yet, but she looked for the things that didn't bug her too much. Like if he did something really productive for the company, she would say to herself, well, he did a good job on that. That was well done. I like the way he handled that. And then it got to be where she could actually begin to think about some of the things that were more personality quirks of his. Like, when he was telling us that that new rule that he has, I really liked the way that he presented that to us because his voice was very soft and compassionate. And so she got to where she could shift it around a little bit, that he wasn't quite as abrasive to her. And she began working with that and working with that and working with that. And then she would find lots of different ways, like, well, he has a family too, and I know he has children that he loves, and those children he's providing for, just like I am, just like I'm doing for my family. And she began to look for all those little ways in which they were the same. This practice of finding the commonalities really can begin to soften abrasive people in our lives. And eventually she got to a point where she could actually totally say and feel it in her heart that this person is a child of God just like I am. That the Creator made this man just the way that he is. And just the way that he is showing up perfectly right here and right now. And what she found was the man started showing up perfectly for her. His behaviors were changing, or maybe his behaviors were different in her eyes. I'm not really sure. But her experience of this difficult person completely shifted. She didn't have to get to a place where she spoke to him and said, I love you, I respect you, I want to have more interaction with you. She never had to do that. But she got to a place in her life where she wasn't as irritated by him. And life was much more peaceful for her as she did that. So Ernest goes on to say after this story, he says, we heal ourselves of any harsh feeling towards others. This does not mean that we always go to the misunderstanding person and offer reconciliation. But in the secret of our own inner thought, we deliberately remove the hostile feeling, which is what this woman did. In the secret place of her own thought, she removed her ill feelings about this man. We forgive ourselves, which is always important and often hard to do, and the other person, and surround the other person with the universal love which we are both a part of. We have difficult people in our lives. We don't have to have them in our experience. We don't have to reconcile with them. We don't have to invite them to our homes. We don't have to go out to dinner with them. But we do have to get to a place where they don't irritate us quite so much, because that's about our own peace of mind. That's about our own journey. When people can pass through our consciousness without us experiencing any of that angst and irritation and anger that we used to feel about it, what a difference the world would be if we could really get to that place. I just happened to have an experience this week. I was really surprised at it because I couldn't even think of the last time I got angry. I know it has happened, but I could not recall the incident the last time I got angry. But I was at a store, which shall remain nameless, and there were no clerks to help me. There was only one register open, and then this huge area of self-checkout, which I don't like. I go to a store, I want to talk to people, I want to have an interaction. If I wanted to do it myself, I would do it online. But that's my own opinion. So anyway, there was one thing after another. So I decided just to buck it up and take care of things and get it done. And then when I had rude clerks at the register, I had rude clerks on the way out. There was something wrong with my order, so I had to go to customer service where I waited 30 minutes. I was really irritated. And as I got in the car, it dawned on me how long it has been since I felt that kind of anger. Well, I have practices that I go to when I feel that kind of way. And so I engaged in a practice called the Ho'oponopono. Are you familiar with the Ho'oponopono? It's a Hawaiian forgiveness practice. So in this practice, there are 4 simple statements that we go through as a part of the practice, and I'll talk about those in a minute here. But it gets me to a place of feeling that oneness where, out of my drama that I'm caught in the moment, out of the anger situation that I've been in, it got me out of that very quickly, just by simply repeating these phrases to myself. I first learned about the Ho'oponopono when I was reading one of Joe Dispenza's books. And in the book, he talks about meeting this psychologist in Hawaii who is not the founder of it, but he's one of the premier practitioners and trainers of the Ho'oponopono, and Joe went to him to get trained in it. And so this psychologist happened to be working at a mental institution for the criminally insane in Hawaii. Now, this was a really, really awful place to work. They could not keep employees longer than 2 months. The employees would walk down the hall with their backs to the hall because it was so dangerous. They would walk sideways with their back to the wall because they couldn't have anybody come up behind them. All of the inmates, whenever they were moved from one place in the building to another, were chained and shackled. It was an awful place, and they couldn't keep any employees. So they get this new director, Dr. Lin. And Dr. Lin comes in, and he goes into his lovely office in the building, and he sits down, and he doesn't come out. And the employees are like, oh, this is great. This is just what we needed, somebody who isn't going to do anything. Well, what Dr. Lin did was he was practicing the Ho'oponopono. And what he did was he opened up the file for each inmate, and he did this practice with them. And pretty soon, the employees were staying. They didn't have that turnover. People were staying 6 months, 8 months, a year. The inmates got to where they didn't have to be shackled or handcuffed as they moved down the hall. And finally, someone came to Dr. Lin and said, what have you done? You are not visible. You are not meeting any patients. What have you done? And this is what he said to them. I simply forgave the part of me that created them. I simply forgave the part of me, or I simply healed the part of me that created them. Now, I could think to myself, okay, wait a second. I didn't do anything to create those clerks at that store that irritated me. But there was something inside of me that allowed the situation to get to where it was. And that's where you do your work. So again, I simply healed the part of me that created them. Now, I know most of us are sitting here thinking, I don't want to think I had anything to do with all this hardship and things that are going on in the world. But there is this internal consciousness that is connected to everything. If we go back to what we've talked about quantum physics, where everything exists in these waves of possibilities, our consciousness taps into it. What is to say that what came out of my consciousness doesn't fall into somebody else's consciousness? There's a part of me where I can do the healing work. And that is the only thing I can heal. I can't heal anybody else. Dr. Lin did not heal those patients. He healed himself. And because he healed himself, it moved out from him. And the experience of everyone in that place was so profound that within 4 years, the building was closed down. They no longer had a need for that kind of an institution for the criminally insane in Hawaii. Powerful work, powerful things that we can begin to do. The word Ho'oponopono in Hawaiian generally means to cause something to move back into balance or to make things right. Cause something to move back into balance. If we look at what Dr. Lin was doing in this his work at the mental institution, he was bringing things back into balance. He brought his experience inside of himself into balance, and that balance moved out, the ripple effect of it moved out to the employees. They felt more in balance. The inmates felt more in balance. Until everything at some point became this peaceful place where we didn't have the turmoil and the conflict and all of the problems that had been there before. So the phrases in Ho'oponopono, and there are 4 phrases, and it does not matter one bit what order you do them in. You'll see them in different orders in different things. But it's, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. And the reason that we say these is, I'm sorry. So the first step is about accepting that I had a part in this. And that could be the hardest part for us. You may think to yourself, I'm not going to say I'm sorry, I didn't do anything wrong. But there's a part of us that allowed the situation to get to where it was. Even if it was us not walking away when we should have walked away from it. So it's accepting that there's something, that there's universal consciousness is moving through everything, and what happens in one person does not stay in isolation, that it ripples out to others. The please forgive me, always asking for forgiveness, is a healing process. Asking for forgiveness, forgiving ourselves and asking for forgiveness. It's not about anybody else. It's all about what's happening within us. And it helps us release the attachment or the force that is behind the experience. It releases it and gets it out of our system. And then gratitude. You know, gratitude is the most healing thing. It says gratitude must be expressed again and again to bring a newness of life into the experience. And then the last one, expressing love. It accelerates the healing process. If we really believe, if we really have faith that spirit is nothing but love, then expressing love to someone actually sends that love of the divine out into working in the world. The more we can express love, the more we can begin to have a different experience of it. So as I said, every time, I'm all about the practice. So if you would, let's play a little bit here and practice the Ho'oponopono. So I just invite you to get comfortable. And bring to mind anything that's irritating you right now. It might be a person, it might be a situation, it might be yourself, it might be whatever. Whatever is irritating you right now. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. Just whatever happens to be on your mind right now. And just kind of feel into that. Let the energy of that feeling, that experience, that irritation, just kind of let it become real in you for a moment. Now, if this situation involves somebody else, I want you to bring that person's face to mind. If it's a group of people, bring them all, the group. Something that symbolizes that experience for you. When you've got that clear in your mind, along with that feeling of irritation, I want you to say, you can say it aloud if you'd like, or you can say it in the silence of your own mind. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Now bring in that sense of forgiveness, that healing power of it. And say, please forgive me. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. And now holding that situation and that image of the people involved, as well as yourself. Just hold yourself and say, I love you. I love you. I love you. And then express gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And now just take a moment and do all 4 phrases in a row. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And just repeat those to yourself for a couple of times. It doesn't matter the order. One last time. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Just taking a deep breath. Let that out. In his phenomenal book, Can We Talk to God?, Ernest says this: it is not by a terrific mental struggle or soul strain that we arrive at this goal, but through quiet expectation, a joyful anticipation, the calm recognition that all the peace there is, and all the power there is, and all the good there is love, the living Spirit Almighty. Nothing exists outside of this one power and presence. Nothing exists in anyone else but it. We are all at different places in the evolution of our consciousness. And some of us understand this better than others. And sometimes when we face those who haven't quite understood it well enough yet, there can be a challenge in our situation. But we always have an opportunity to do our own work, to heal that part of us that might be in any way possible contributing to the situation. Even if it's just the irritation I feel inside during it. It is a prime opportunity for us to do our spiritual practices, to remember that there is only this power of love operating in the world, that is present in each and every person we meet, no matter the appearance, no matter the situation, no matter how irritating they can be. There is that power of love. And one day everyone will waken up to it, to where we all have that experience of love and peace and joy 24/7. But until that time, we have the opportunity to do our work. We have the opportunity always to enter into the experience of being one with that love, with that divine creative force. I'll leave you with this one quote here. You are made perfect in the law when you enter into the conscious communion with the love. Remember, Ernest talked about love and law. The law is the way it works. The love is the driving force behind it. When we enter into that conscious union of that force, then the law works the way it does. Impartially, perfectly, just the way that we need it to work each and every time. So let's take this into one of our other spiritual practices, our spiritual mind treatment prayer. So I invite our practitioners to stand and surround us. These beloved individuals spend 4 years training, reading, studying, so they can be that place of love a little more often than they used to be. As I said, it's always a practice. And so if you would, just take in a nice breath. Center yourself in this moment. I like to close my eyes. That's up to you. So right here and right now, I feel that one indescribable, indestructible, unimaginable love intelligence. That one that is so vast and so great and so perfect that it defies any description. It is that creative love intelligence that has brought forth everything into existence. It is the isness and the allness and the fullness of all life. It was there in the beginning and evermore. And from its own essence, its own energy, its own thought, that creative force brought forth everything into existence and imbued it with that unconditional love, the power of itself, the perfection, and the peace. Because I know that there is only this one thing, I know that I am one with it. That creative love intelligence has manifested me in its own image and likeness, brought me forth as a realization of its love. And because I know this is true for me, I know this is true for everyone, that each one of us is that individualization of spirit, that manifestation of perfect love, of divine harmony and peace. That each one of us is imbued with the power of this love. And it is showing up perfectly as us, through us, at all times. And so knowing this truth, I speak my word. I know that each one of us is that manifestation of perfect love. Each person we ever encounter is a manifestation of that perfect love. It doesn't matter whether we realize it or anyone else realizes it. We are the perfection of the divine. It is moving through us now and always. It is showing up in every situation as us. And in every situation, we have an opportunity to express more of it, to be more of it, and to see more of it in everyone we encounter. And I'm so grateful to know this. I'm so grateful to feel it. And I'm so grateful to know that it is happening in the world right here and right now. And so I release this word into that law, that creative action that always says yes. It is pouring itself forth into expression as the magnificent love intelligence. I let this go and I let it be. And together we say, so it is.